About women and rights and emancipation, it's a very sensitive discussion and issue among Muslims, and I think that we have to tackle it and to shaken the old, certainties and perceptions, because this is really unacceptable what we have. And I'm used to say Islam has no problem with women, but Muslims have. And this is the reality within the Islamic communities, and that we have to ask ourselves why. There is, yes, a macho reading of the scriptural sources. There is, yes, something which is a male-orientated building of the whole things. The discourse on women, it's coming from a very specific orientation. So it's clear that the whole Islamic message during the 23 years of the revelation, it's going from killing the young girls to building something which is a relationship based on love and tenderness. This is the last verse revealed on that, and the verse was about stop killing your daughters. So there is a process, and the process is really important. It's to understand, yes, you have verses, but you have every single verse, you have to put it in a specific time to know what is the context in which it was revealed, and then to understand the movement of the message. And the movement of the message is towards emancipation. And I have no problem myself to say, look, when I'm looking at the situation, the state of affairs of our Islamic majority countries, for example, we need something which is a feminism, which is an Islamic feminism. In fact, resistance to discriminations and resistance to its wrong understanding.
When the Quran talks to the believers, it talks to the believing men and women in terms of their rights and their responsibilities. So on the one hand, one could argue that there is no disparity there, that the believing men and women are equal in the eyes of God. Where the problem lies is where the believing men and women are equal in the eyes of society that these believing men and women have created for themselves. And I think that there are fundamental issues still for Muslim women in many Muslim societies that are simply not being dealt with. It's not so much about feminism or equality in terms of having equal rights to everything. It's actually much more about having the voice to express your concerns in the first place. And I think there are serious issues to do with that in many Muslim countries where, and this may sound like a generalization, but I think where there are these kinds of voices, they have to be heard, where women are having to struggle against all sorts of oppression in order to have their voice heard or in order to liberate themselves from an oppressive situation. And many of the times what we're finding is that the theological framework just isn't providing the right answers. They can't wait for the scholars to come up with the theological arguments. They are doing what they have to do in order to allow women, in order to live for themselves, some kind of meaningful existence. And on the one hand, although that's a huge shame that that's happening, I think it's the only alternative they have.